respect me. I've been given this lovely topic on the fuel dilemma. Everyone's talking about what's going to be burning next in that engine room on board ships. And although no one has a crystal ball, I would say that we can try to look at some data of how things have panned out so far to be able to make a serious understanding of what is what, so that if there are any decision makers, we can use these guidelines. So my colleague Ruben has come up with this fantastic animation of a bird's eye view of a container ship making its way, and obviously it requires energy, and that energy comes from something that burns in the engine room, and that's what we're going to talk about. Let's dive straight in. What is the current scenario? How is it looking at the moment is what we want to talk about. And the simple answer is yes, shipping is still choosing fossil oils as of now, which is majority of the in operation vessels. You can see the graphics, the percentage is there. 98.9% is what is burning today is fossil oil. So we talk about alternate fuels, we talk about all that. The present situation is that we are still burning that lovely black stuff. We call it low sulfur and all these fancy things, but it is cheaper, it is available in most global ports. It's a mature bunkering infrastructure, and it's technically reliable because our engines are all designed for this. What are the alternates though? The alternates are plenty. There's everyone making a gun for an alternate position. What will be the next fuel? But the point is, let's understand what is on the order books, because those guys who have placed orders have already spent their money, and their money is spent on two leading fuels, that is LNG and methanol. And as far as I understand, this data is up to 2033 is where the order books are already signed up for, and only 16% is alternate fuels. Of course, there'll be more coming up, but as per the DNV source that I have been able to take out on alternate fuels 2026, there is just 16% on order, and the two leading fuels which are considered for the new builds are LNG and methanol. That is a statement of fact. So what is on order might be a good indication is what will come out and get rolled into the waters as alternate fuels. So I'll be focusing, for punity of time, 20 minutes given to me. I won't be talking too much about the other fuels, but I'll touch upon some of those. So let's talk about the costing, because one of the aspects which the organizers asked me to speak on was costing. So price is a damn important criteria, because your vessels are eventually chartered and somebody is paying for its fuel and its employability. We've got a price differentiator of LNG in LNG in blue, the conventional fuel oil which is in orange, and methanol, which is considerably higher in its graph in yellow there, which you can understand as of today. But if you see the last data of 2025 July onwards, the methanol prices are nosediving. We hope it comes down and merges with the vicinity of where the fuel oil and LNG graph is, which is almost converging with each other. But the key message in this is that shipping is definitely cost driven. Cost not just for employability of the vessel, but also what burns in the engine room, because that's a considerable cost for the ship ops. Fuel choice will follow price first. Of course, there's no point in having very, very cheap fuel when it is just not available at convenient ports. So availability is key. And of course, the engines have to be ready for those slides. for those fuels. So given the three fuels that one is currently being used and two others, we've got a good cost comparison, so we know where we stand. Now let's dive in a little more technical aspects of what actually is comprised, and I've thrown in ammonia and hydrogen in there just to add a little bit of a mix on the alternate fuels available. I've kept the conventional fuel out because that's already being burned for 98% vessels. So let's talk about these aspects. Let's look at what hydrogen looks like, because clearly the specific energy of hydrogen is quite high. All the greens are positive, whereas the density is very, very low. Methanol density is 805. So if you multiply density and specific energy, you get a value of 16,000, which is much higher than the density versus specific energy of hydrogen. And one aspect with hydrogen we talked about as a very, very positive fuel. We already see buses out there which are hydrogen propelled, but if you see this as a storage temperature of minus 253 versus 25 degrees, which is methanol, it loses the plot there, because to keep hydrogen at 253, you're actually burning energy to store it at 253, which keeps the equation completely out of consideration. And the volumes are huge to keep hydrogen. So hydrogen will stay out of consideration for a long time until and unless technology comes up with a better answer. These numbers are what we have from the source which I've got mentioned there. And these are very, very key considerations why the current order books have preferred methanol over hydrogen. Although hydrogen is seen as a much cleaner fuel, it's much more clean burning, etc. But it has its drawbacks, as I mentioned. Now let's talk specifically on LNG as a transition fuel. It's, as you saw from the order books, and I've for reference kept the graph right there. As you see, the blue bar indicates the maximum number out of 16%, 8% are LNG orders on the books, which means more than half the new alternate fuels are made of alternate possibility of burning LNG. I must add, there are very few dedicated only LNG engines out there. They're always an alternate fuel option. But the preferred alternate fuel as of now is methanol. But then there is the methane slip, which undermines climate benefits. It does not deliver net zero, which is one of the criteria of IMO has set, and it is also still a fossil fuel. Now that being said, we have a certain goal to meet, the criteria to meet, so it's not all clean burning. But the availability and the mature network of vessels makes it the most convenient fuel to burn. And as I've mentioned, current worldwide adoption of alternate fuels only being indicative of 2033 as the order books indicate. Continuing with LNG, it offers near-term CO2 reduction. It has a benefit of almost 25% on the higher end than heavy oil, and major shipping companies are preferring and investing in LNG bunkering terminals as the first adopters. Now, if you look at the growth curve and you see from 25 to 26, that is the transition year we are talking about. We just started 2026. But if you look at how the growth is going to be exponentially rolling out new vessels, 2027, 2028 is going to be a huge jump on LNG fueled fleets. And on the right side, you can see the vessel types. I don't know if it's very legible. It's not very legible, is it? The type of vessels there. The leading is container ships are leading the pack there of the early adopters. Now let's go to methanol. I'm halfway there. Let's go to methanol, which is a rapidly emerging fuel, and it is already available at 120 ports worldwide. Did you know that? Methanol is available at 120 ports. When I was doing my research, this number blew my mind because I thought it was still in its early stages, but it is, and I've got a little insight. We are conscious of it being in the Middle East, and I thought it would be interesting to follow up a couple of slides on where in the Middle East methanol would be available as an alternate fuel. Mind you, I missed out on saying it is absolutely safe, low carbon, and it's carried in room temperature. 25 degrees is the carrying temperature of methanol. But here's a little information on the methanol grid in UAE. We have already a capacity of 1.8 million tons per annum scheduled to be rolled out in 2028. And that's by no means a small number. So like Fujairah is, UAE is also looking at continuing with its fuel supply hub legacy. Now, a little on the other source which I was exploring, and there was also interesting consideration on fuel efficiency, which is not just focused on fuel itself. It's focused on paints, it's focused on hull structures. Bulbous bow comes in as an enhanced mechanism to make ships much more fuel efficient. Propellers and rudders and rudders particularly so, are a leading consideration in that. And as you can see, on the right side, we are also looking at which alternate fuel is most ready, and methanol readiness is the most prominent in there, 610 versus 134 in terms of readiness of the existing fleet versus the order books. So the order books are going rapidly towards methanol. Now this is a slightly old slide. The person who was mentoring me, and I acknowledge him in the end, told me that this was a very old slide, but I found this very, very interesting. Particularly the carbon capture and storage aspects. We've got 2-stroke and 4-stroke engines. So this is a 3 to 8 year outlook on how methanol, hydrogen, ammonia is going to be looked and considered as. So this is where the usage is going to be 2-stroke engines, 4-stroke engines, boilers and fuel cells. So as you can see, fuel cells is running away with methanol. Ammonia is more or less, but regulations for onboard use is low in methanol, ammonia, hydrogen. So this is a very nice indicative slide on where this fuel will most preferred to be burned in which aspect of the engine room. Not everything that burns on vessels is propelling ships. Some of it burns boilers, some of it burns generators which generate electricity on board, and very little or some of it goes to the engine. 2 and 4-stroke have different appetite for these. Moving on, where does shipping stand with the order book? And this is an interesting one. I've mentioned it earlier, but this is about ship types. Let's talk about where the numbers are. Number of ships on order. These are pure number on order. 966 vessels are actually on order for LNG vessels. Interestingly, hybrid and battery operated, I must say battery operated vessels are usually near coastal vessels or research vessels. They're not very, very large ocean going vessels. But if you see the LNG ships in operations, 539 versus 966, you will get a little idea of where it is. But look where methanol is. Methanol, there are only 70 vessels in operation currently, but it's going to jump on to 336. So the growth potential is huge. So the industry and the order books clearly have a better have a better confidence on methanol as a growing alternative to LNG vessels, LNG fueled vessels. This is an ABS source data on how the order book looks like. This is broken down on tankers, bulk carriers, but you look at total gas ships, LNG and LPG vessels, they are running away with it. And you can see the red on the LNG and LPG vessels graph. They are really very optimistic about alternate fuels, not because they carry the product themselves. But tankers look like they are going to be the early adopters for the alternate fuels, as you can see there. I just thought giving you status of how the numbers look like would be an interesting way to convince you all, rather than me talking and giving my opinion. This is the numbers which are out there in the shipyards. Ships are being built to accommodate these, and that would give you an idea. Now, taking the subject completely different into something that a lot of people are talking about, is nuclear propelled shipping going to be the way forward? Probably the next generation. I'll be probably gone and buried by then, but probably by the time our kids come into some kind of senior positions, in my view, it will. The regulations are not ready, but if you see the NS Savannah, which is that vessel there, she was propelled by nuclear fuel as early as 1962. Beat that for being old technology or new technology. So the technology exists. Most warships, most submarines are today propelled using nuclear propulsion. There is a question about disposal of the nuclear waste. There are only 3 countries at the moment which receive afterlife nuclear waste of what comes out of vessels, but that is where it is. And imagine you or your neighbor coming in with a radioactive car or nuclear car in your garage, or his garage, and you're his neighbor. You'd probably ask him to buzz off or try to, because it emits, it is dangerous, and it has its drawbacks. So the ports will question. There will be having to be local regulations which will have to be defined. Waste management, I mentioned. These are some of the hurdles which civil vessels, merchant vessels have a handicap on, but it is a very existing technology and it has a huge potential going forward. Now let's talk about some policies. This is the boring bit, and I'm promising you that after this, another slide or two, it will get interesting. We have got framework that exists in place. UK and EU are the early adopters. As you know, emission taxes are already in place for vessels which are carrying cargo into the European Union, and they are starting to charge people carbon tax, those who are coming, burning black oil and emitting a lot of fossil fuel waste. So the regulations are critical. Net zero is the target. Most IMO nations have adopted it. IMO does not give out any regulations, it only recommends, but those recommendations are ratified and signed off by the IMO states, and those go back home and make those into regulations. So I am a registrar for Antigua and Barbuda. It's a Commonwealth flag, it's an open registry, and it does have a seat at the IMO since 1984. And I have attended IMO meetings on behalf of the flag, and I can assure you that we are one of those who, our permanent representative, Ambassador Dwight Gardner, he is the chairman of the technical committee at IMO. So if you want to know who comes up with these regulations, I can point a finger towards who it is. Of course, the chairman is only chairing the committee. It is the committee members, and then it's passed and voted into the General Assembly for everybody to take a call on. But ammonia and hydrogen have weakened investor confidence. That you have already seen in the order books. So LNG is the leading transition fuel. And as per DNV data, the largest number of alternate fuel vessels are going to be LNG vessels. The bunkering infrastructure is already in place. Like I said, the last slide is going to be very interesting, and that's what you take away from being so patient and listening. And policy usually is an important aspect of transition. It is guiding the way for this transition. So IMO, we all need to breathe good air. Although shipping contributes to less than 3% of what is called pollution, and that's debated by a few people. But new building orders have a clear track record, and I do not say it, I do not have a view, I have just shown you the mirror. This is what is out there, and that is self-convincing, I'm sure. But life cycle cost decisions are key, because once you invest in that decision, it is a decision that asset owner has to stick with for 25 years, which is an average age of a vessel, if not 20 years for a prudent ship owner. So in my view, any ship owner will not take that life cycle decision on a vessel and place orders without due consideration, without research, and without having a good deliberation on it. But saying that, there are not just enough people, but there are many ship owners are not even on the fence. They decide to just remain doing nothing about it, and that's going to cost them. If you're going to buy old fleet with old tonnage which has a high carbon footprint, and you think you're getting a cheap vessel, you're actually buying a liability. This is my personal view on it, but inaction will be extremely costly. I was given 20 minutes and I'm 21 minutes on it. Thank you very much. I'll leave 5 minutes for question and answers.